Welcome everyone to the last session of the day and of the forum, CAMCA Forum 2025, taking place here in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, under the theme Envisioning a Regional Future, Business, Society, and Governance in CAMCA. We are going to be talking about critical minerals at this session and the CAMCA advantage. And I have been very lucky to have been tasked to moderate this very impressive panel of speakers. Before I get into introducing our speakers, I'd like to take the usual disclaimer that I'm here as a CAMCA fellow. I work for the government of Mongolia, but anything I do or say here is my personal opinions and actions and has nothing to do with the position of the government of Mongolia. Now, I'd like to introduce the panel now. So I'd like to start with Mr. Jonathan Elkind. He has been here on 2 panels already over the past 2 days, but I'd like to introduce him specifically again because this is our last session. Jonathan Elkind is a fellow and senior research scholar at the Center on Global Energy Policy. After a long and distinguished career devoted to energy and environment policy in the private and public sectors, from 2009 to 2017, he worked on international energy and climate issues at the United States Department of Energy. During the Obama administration, helping to coordinate energy policy and leading climate and energy programs with key global partners. And he has been a dear friend and a constant speaker for us fellows during many, if not all, of the Rumsfeld Fellowship meetings. So thank you for being here and giving us more time from your life. I would like to move on to Ms. Ainur Kapparova. She is the head of Mining Project Management Office at the Astana International Financial Center. Ainur is also a co-founder and partner at KT Capital Group, an investment and consulting company specializing in financial advisory and management consulting that focuses on companies and investment projects operating in Kazakhstan and Central Asia. She is also our CAMCA fellow from Kazakhstan. We'd like to move on to Marc Meleard. Marc is the CEO of Badrakh Energy, a joint venture between the Orana Mining and Mongolian state-owned Mongatem. And he has recently successfully signed an investment agreement to develop world-class uranium deposit with the government of Mongolia. And he has been with Orana for the past 13 years, 4 of which have been in Mongolia so far. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to add the headshot of our final speaker, Ainur, who is our CAMCA fellow from Mongolia. Ainur is Director of Energy and Renewables Projects at MCS Group in Mongolia. He previously worked on multi-strategy investment fund, investing across Asia Pacific in multiple industries, deal sourcing, analysis, and investment structuring, public and private equity, and debts. He will be providing us with a Mongolia perspective on some of the issues we're about to discuss. So thank you to our wonderful panel. Without having to go into further details, I'd like to go straight into questions. I'd like to start with John. And because this is such an interesting and vibrant topic, it's a hot topic these days, I'd like to go to John with the very basic, what is critical minerals and why is it a hot topic these days? And for the comprehensiveness of this discussion, can you give us a rundown of why this is so, and what, in the context of this discussion as a regional advantage, what key aspects of critical minerals and its development we should look at more closely, and then we can move on from the basics to the next questions.
Sure. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here again. I just want to pause for one moment. It takes a huge effort by a lot of people to bring about this kind of an event, and I think everybody in the room knows that well. Having said that, I would be remiss if I didn't note a particular person, that being Dato Sambadze, who for me has, first of all, he's the person that first got me involved in this, and with such meticulous care has curated the visits by all of the fellows, and such an impressive group of people the fellows are. So I just wanted to say a special word of thanks to Dato from me and perhaps from others here for all of that meticulous, tireless, patient, unflappable work that you do from one round to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. So, bravo. And I apologize to the moderator for that. Look, the minerals topic is important because we are seeing a fundamental change in the global energy sector, but also in other technology areas that require minerals that fall into this category that very loosely is referred to as critical minerals. We're not just talking about the rare earth elements, we're talking about copper and cobalt and lithium and nickel, quite everyday minerals that are found around the globe in many places. The International Energy Agency is one of the institutions that watches the development of minerals markets, and just last week they came out with their latest critical minerals market outlook for 2025. They highlighted there that in the year 2024, demand for lithium grew by 30%. 30%, certainly an eye-popping number. Nickel, cobalt, graphite, and rare earth elements grew by between 6 and 8% year on year in 2024 from 2023. So one of the reasons why we talk about the minerals issues a lot is because of the rapid growth that we are seeing in minerals that are used for everything from semiconductors to magnets in wind turbines to minerals that are used in guidance systems and night vision goggles. So the scale is tilted very heavily in the direction of the energy sector, but it's not the only sector, medical devices as well. Are we or are we not on the cusp of the great nuclear renaissance that has been talked about now for a couple of decades? Personally, I hope that we are. That will make a huge difference in how busy Marc Meleard is in his work. A challenge that is embedded in that demand growth is the tempo of the demand growth. If lithium grew by 30% last year, does that mean that an investor can be sure for the next 5 years that there will be similar growth? Or how big of an impact does the relative slowing of the electric vehicle market translate into in terms of reduced prices? The other side of this story that has gone along with the demand growth has been plummeting prices for a wide range of critical minerals because supply has outpaced demand in its growth. China has demonstrated a willingness to use its dominance, striking dominance in the processing and refining of minerals as a political tool in a time when the trade tensions with the United States are certainly very high. And on top of that, there are risks, and with this I'll stop, risks that attend to non-political motivations for the disruption of mineral supply. For example, in last year, 2024, after Cyclone Megan hit Australia, supplies of manganese ore were severely disrupted and still remain severely disrupted, which in turn sent prices through the roof because of a simple disruption in physical supply. So for all of these reasons, the minerals markets are important for us to pay attention to, and they certainly are headache-inducing and opportunity-presenting at the same time.
Thank you for that. And I think with John's nicely set background, I'd like to move on to Marc. Depending on how you define critical minerals and what its uses and relevance is, uranium could or could not be a critical mineral. And I know that the US does not define uranium as a critical mineral, but in relation to your work, I'd like to ask Marc, can you provide the international context for nuclear energy and what that means to a key player like Orano Mining? And you have projects in Kazakhstan, Mongolia, and Uzbekistan. So what does the international context mean for you?
Thank you, Manduul. Good afternoon, everyone. So the global energy landscape is just undergoing a massive transformation right now. I just wanted to remind, let's say, the main conclusion of the climate change conference. It's phasing out fossil fuel, so mainly coal, oil, and gas, and to increase as much as possible the production of decarbonized energy, mainly renewable energy and nuclear energy. So the goal by 2050 is to triple these two kind of energy. So it's a massive transformation. And during the COP 2028, uranium has been acknowledged as a strategic material to succeed in the energy transition plan. If we look at the trend to triple the nuclear energy production by 2050, in fact, by 2030, in fact, we are not able, with the present mine in the world, we are not able to feed the supply chain of the nuclear fuel business. So in fact, we need really to open new mines in the coming years, and that's why also the agreement that we had between Orano Group and the Mongolian government is just coming on time to bridge the gap in fact, to feed the nuclear energy sector. So that's very important, and we do hope that with the agreement that we had in Mongolia, it will probably attract additional investors in Mongolia.
Thank you for that. Can I come to you, Ainur? So you're heading the Mining Project Management Office at AI at the Astana International Financial Center. I'd like to ask you the flip side of what I asked Marc, with a focus on critical minerals, not nuclear energy per se. Can you, what's your perspective? What's the context, international context that you're looking at AIFC?
Thank you for this question. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I think that, Jonathan, you gave a great global context and definition of what critical minerals is. And I'd like to give a perspective from someone like me who's on the ground in Kazakhstan. So as part of my consulting company and as part of my role at the AIFC, I deal with a lot of international companies, international investors who come looking for projects in Kazakhstan. So I can say with certainty that basically every third such company or investor, or even every second such investor, is looking for mining projects in the region. So these mining projects, they're mostly critical minerals. Every government has their own list of critical minerals. In Kazakhstan's context, it's all the rare earths plus copper, as well as gold and silver. Lots of companies already working in Kazakhstan from all over the world, like Yildirim from Turkey, Rio Tinto, Fortescue, all the big names. Korean Kogam announced that they will be searching for some projects. US companies such as Freeport-McMoRan, Newmont Mining, they're all announcing that they will be doing some exploration works in our country. Also, a lot of these investors are asking outside of Kazakhstan for a lot of the Central Asian countries. Our region in general is considered to be very rich in critical minerals. And it's famous for its copper and gold belts. Also, another distinct feature of our region is that a lot of our mineral potential is underexplored. So for Kazakhstan, I think the official statistic is that more than 90% of the lands in the country are still not explored. I read somewhere, and maybe you can comment on this, but I think for Mongolia it's also something similar. So there's tremendous opportunity that still lies in the ground. And the last time there have been vast exploration works is in the 1970s that was done by Soviet geologists. Now these works are considered to be very good based on what I hear from my international friends. However, time has passed, technologies have evolved, and there's still just huge opportunity that is beneath us, literally.
Thank you, Ainur. I'd like to move on to exploring the notion of a regional advantage that CAMCA may have in the critical minerals arena. But before I do that, I'm very curious, and I'd like to ask John, would a regional advantage, as opposed to separate interests for each country, serve outside actors such as the US? So would a more unified region benefit interested partners more than the divide and conquer approach these days?
Thanks for that question. Let's acknowledge the starting point, which is very grave concerns about the extent of concentration of minerals processing in particular that occurs in one country, that being China. One has seen in the energy sector and in other economic sectors the risks that attend to that kind of concentration and the importance, the benefits that arise from diversification of supply chains. Now, a critical question that needs to be thought about by each and every one of the CAMCA countries that wishes to be active in the minerals markets is whether you wish to be active only in the extraction or in the refining and processing, the value-added segments. I raise this as an unclear question because each step of the way translates into investment requirements, translates into water requirements, space, community relations challenges. It is not accidental that the mining industry in many OECD countries really has withered to a very great extent. Those industries have essentially disappeared in many OECD countries, and the reason why is because the mining and minerals industries did not cover themselves in glory through the middle of the last century up until the 1970s and 80s. So there is a super powerful hangover from bad environmental impacts. Those impacts can be addressed effectively by good industrial practice, and that can be communicated effectively to communities that are on the front line, but that needs to be done very carefully. Now, to your question about working together across the CAMCA region borders, the individual countries, there are practicalities that complicate that to a significant degree in terms of the movement of large volumes of heavy ore and concentrates. So not a simple snap of the fingers thing to do, but is there opportunity for collaboration so that not every country is aspiring to do every segment of the supply chain, absolutely there is, but it will take time to build that story. I recall the comment made by your Mongolian compatriot, Tufshin, this morning in the geopolitics panel, that the idea of an infrastructure summit was, for now, perhaps, unfortunately, a bridge too far. So that needs to be borne in mind in response to your question, and building the value proposition for why it would be beneficial to have that kind of cross-border collaboration within the CAMCA region.
Speaking of diversification, can we go back to Marc? Orano as a third neighbor, part of the third neighbor policy that Mongolia likes to refer to. What's your perspective? Do you think there's a regional advantage since you have activities in 3 of the CAMCA countries? How does this come about in the activities of Orano?
We have a real advantage to work in CAMCA region, and I'm going to illustrate with what we are facing right now. So our project to extract uranium from Mongolia is really a pioneer project in Mongolia. So first uranium project in the country. Second, first time the in-situ recovery technology is going to be used in Mongolia. But it's a technology which is really well mastered in 2 countries, especially Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan. So our project is just a greenfield project. There is nothing. We have to build everything, and we have to train every single employees. We have to bring the technology, and and to achieve that, we will rely on our sister companies in Uzbekistan and in Kazakhstan in order to transfer the technology, to train the people, to commission the plant, to start the production. And in fact, if we hadn't these companies in such country which has a very good knowledge of this technology, it would have been really difficult to organize this, let's say, ramp up of our activities. So we do have really an advantage with CAMCA, and let's say our humble level of company, and we could imagine that why not to think such kind of cooperation between the companies, countries at the state level, why not? And in fact, what we are doing is, especially in the uranium business, it's close to cooperation between countries, because if we just have a look of Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and also Mongolia, in fact, all the uranium companies, they are state-owned companies. So in fact, liaising with other company, it means that you are liaising also with the countries.
Thank you for that. Ainur, can we move on to you and ask you, as someone who's working for one of the biggest companies in Mongolia, especially in the mining sector, what's your perspective on whether we have an advantage as a country, Mongolia itself, and whether that ties in with the rest of the CAMCA countries? Is there such a thing? Can we believe in the CAMCA advantage?
So to answer that question, I would like to zoom out to maybe like back to 2008. And back in 2008, like Ayutthaya, one of the largest copper gold mine, not only in Mongolia, in the whole world, received like finalized investment agreement with Mongolian government, and Rio Tinto became the major shareholder, and that opened the floodgates of foreign investment in Mongolian mining. There were like so many investors coming into Mongolia for investments, and at the time it was very hard even to find restaurant seats because there were so many people coming in, so it was boom time. And during that time, one of the banker guy told me like Mongolia has the potential to become Saudi Arabia of metals in a way. So now thinking back on that quote specifically right now, like as Professor John mentioned, like the main reason why critical minerals is becoming important is besides supply chain security, the actual demand is increasing. Like for example, on copper, like the total copper that was mined and used for past hundreds of years, past millennia since 2023 was 700 million tons. And according to projections, in the next 20 years, we're going to use exactly same quantity of copper. So we're going to use like same copper that was used for past 2,000 years in the next 20 years. So that means the copper demand is increased. And why it's increased? Because it's used in grid improvements, in grids, electrifying. Copper is in wiring. And also in electric cars, batteries, and even wind farms. So if you think about cars, like fuel car, normal car doesn't use that much metal. But EV cars uses 4 times more copper and other minerals than any other cars. And for similarly, like if you talk about energy production, like coal power plant compared to wind farm uses like 4 or 5 times more steel and copper and everything. So that means like in the future, as long as the world is committed to improving grid and reducing carbon emission, I think this critical mineral demand will still be there, and it will be amplified more because of the supply chain security. So that given, Mongolia has a huge potential in playing that, because like for now, like as our Deputy Prime Minister mentioned yesterday, only like a small area of Mongolia has been explored. And out of that small area explored, Oyu Tolgoi is a shining example of what kind of big deposit can be found in Mongolia. It's going to become number 4 biggest copper producer in the world. And for that, like it may look easy, like to bring in new mine, but for that mine to go to the peak production, I think peak production will happen in the next 2 years. It took 20 years to get there. So mining has a long lead time. So that means like if that copper projection is there, we need more mines to go online. So that means that Mongolia has the potential to get more exploration done, to do things. And Rio Tinto's Oyu Tolgoi copper mine operation is a good example on how things are done efficiently. And also we see that it's a good example how foreign investor has worked in Mongolia. Another big I think advantage is Mongolia has around like 3,300 gigawatts of wind and solar resources. So to put that in perspective, like total American capacity is around, I think, 2,800 gigawatts area, and Chinese is 304,000 gigawatts, and Mongolian is only 2 gigawatts. So whole Mongolian renewable capacity has capacity to power entire America or China or 1,000 times Mongolia. So that means using that renewables, we can also provide like green power to Mongolian mining industries and to produce like green metals. And that can truly become like an advantage for Mongolia, like to remark, like we will produce the supply chain materials that's needed from copper and rare earth, and we'll also do them in a green way, like if we can build renewable energy that can supply the mine.
May I ask how distant could this scenario be, in your opinion?
Like I guess like for 100% renewable energy, that's in terms of technical capacity wise, it may be difficult because renewables like solar and wind has some interconsistency that depends on our nature. But then the good thing is the battery price is decreasing, so battery can be a game changer. And secondly, one of the most important things in the world is also America, especially is pushing this is in a nuclear energy sector. Nuclear energy has like a zero carbon. The nuclear energy is basically a clean energy. It doesn't produce carbon emission compared to coal in nature. And modular, like small nuclear plants, etc., can also provide like baseline power. And thirdly, the wind and solar itself is also getting extremely cheap every year. And why is it getting cheap? Because the scale is increasing and technology is improving. So with things that in mind, 100% green is possible. But I guess like the mixed transitionary one will be in play next there.
So as you can sense, I'm a little bit impatient for results. I might have to wait a little bit longer than I would like. Can we zoom out a little bit? And I would like to move on to Ainur to ask about lessons learned, because John mentioned good industrial practices. We've heard from Marc and Ainur about various projects, mainly in Mongolia, but in other countries. Can you speak about lessons learned, any projects in other countries throughout the region that can be shared with the rest of the region, the countries? I assume you'd be in the best position to know all of them.
I certainly do not know all of them, but I think a great example would be Oyu Tolgoi here in Mongolia, which I have only read about, but for those of you who don't know, this is one of the top 5 copper discoveries, largest copper discoveries in the world. It was initially discovered by a junior small mining company called Ivanhoe, and they eventually attracted investment for development from Rio Tinto. So this mine, I hear that it's absolutely stunning to see it. It's an underground mine, and there's like an entire world basically that was built underground. And besides the foreign direct investment that came, besides the big names, I know that at some point, and you guys know this better than me, but at some point the government of Mongolia, I believe, got like a 40% stake or a 30% stake. So it was truly an international and local cooperation. I have also read that the government of Australia has provided a lot of knowledge transfer for this project, including training and assessment. So I think that is an amazing example of how mining projects should work in the region. And this is going back to best practices in terms of mining, in terms of just bringing the best technologies and the best practices from around the world. Unfortunately, there are also not so good examples where environmental standards are not followed, and that's quite bad. So I think that we should follow examples like Oyu Tolgoi, and also just wanted to add that I think one other advantage that we have as a region, like big discoveries like Oyu Tolgoi, that means that there's potential nearby. Foreign companies like big discoveries. So the more discoveries there are in the region, the more FDI will come. So I think that it's very important to share among us these successes, these best practices, because as a region together we can benefit greatly.
Thank you for that. I think that's a very important point. And also, I'd just like to add that in addition to Oyu Tolgoi, which I'm very impressed to hear that you were impressed by it, we hope to add Orano uranium mining project to the list of industrial good practices in Mongolia. So hopefully that'll go smoothly, and we have our fingers crossed for the project. So again, like I said, I'm very impatient. I want to see results. I want to see concrete ideas from this panel. And I would really like John to share your thoughts on so we have established that we have potential for a regional advantage on critical minerals, I think across the board. But to enable that regional advantage within CAMCA and benefit therefrom, what are some measures that the U.S. could facilitate or adopt? And also, what could the region itself, our own countries, do to make itself more attractive? I think I know what you're going to say to this, but I can't help myself. I need to ask this. Is an intergovernmental cooperation between the countries of CAMCA desirable or even possible, assuming there's shared interest? And then perhaps if you don't want to go there, what about non-governmental and geopolitical actions? How do we tap into our advantage as a region? That's what I really want to know your thoughts on.
Well, let me see if I can answer at least in part. The good news in a time when there's lots of challenging news out of Washington, the good news is that attention to minerals markets and minerals development, and in particular the diversification of global supply chains for minerals, is very much a front of mind focus for the US administration. This is one of the areas where you will find in Washington pretty strong bipartisan support. Now, it's also the case that the current U.S. administration seems to be genetically predisposed against strong, ongoing international cooperation, which is a problem here because if one wants to engage, for example, in friendshoring or other such activities, you actually need friends with whom to be doing that. But the U.S. administration is mobilizing funds that can be made available through the International Development Finance Corporation, through the U.S. Exim Bank, and other such development finance institutions that can be very relevant to the opportunities, the support for U.S. companies and investors in markets such as those in the CAMCA region. A really excellent collaboration called the Minerals Security Partnership that was started at the U.S. State Department under the previous administration has a very uncertain future at this time, but CAMCA's engagement, perhaps as a region with MSP, the Minerals Security Partnership, might be something that would be worth focusing on. And the last thing that I'll point to now is efforts to manage or to attempt to manage the price volatility that I was talking about earlier. Minerals prices are volatile by their nature, but it appears to many people, and I would score myself as being in this group, it appears that part of the intention or the impact of the way that Chinese players are active in the minerals markets is having the effect of driving competitors out of business and then acquiring companies that are in financial hardship. So if the governments of the CAMCA region can be engaging with international partners on techniques and approaches that can help to insulate to a certain extent the risks attendant to that price volatility. Here I'm thinking about advanced market commitments. I'm thinking about floor prices, other financial interventions that could be employed that would help to secure the economic basis of companies that are investing so that they are able to compete in this highly, highly concentrated set of global markets around minerals.
So in addition to good industrial practices, government support in insulating price volatility.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily mean budgetary support from the countries of the CAMCA region, but engagement, for example, with financial institutions, whether on a bilateral basis, such as DFC that I referred to, or with some of the multilateral development banks to see what kind of structures they could help to support that would enable the survival and prospering of companies that are in the market.
Excellent. I love that point. I'm going to take it home with me and to my work if I can. Marc, perhaps intergovernmental cooperation is not the best question to ask of an investor, but perhaps we can pivot a little and you can share with us how Orano itself has been working with the region between sister projects and would uniformity between the different jurisdictions or countries have been helpful for you as a business in advancing the projects themselves?
I'm really sorry, I have a strong echo, I'm not able to understand.
So,
if you can maybe just...
Sure.
Just say it without the mic, it's hard to echo.
Yeah, how has Orano been working within the region between its sister projects?
Okay. So you mean how we are working with the sister projects?
In the region, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Mongolia.
So again, regarding so we have right now in the CAMCA, we are present, or Ainur is present in 3 different countries. So Kazakhstan with the CATCO facilities, Norlicum with Navoyuran in Uzbekistan, and with Monatom in Mongolia. There are 3 joint ventures, but they are all with state-owned companies. And so 100 state-owned companies. And so we have, so these companies are from the top-ranking companies in that type of mining. And so we have already people working in Uzbekistan before and Kazakhstan before who are part of the company. And even myself, I worked in CATCO before. So in fact, we have no real choice, in fact, to commission our site. We need really to rely on the best knowledge in the CAMCA region. And that's what we are going to do.
Thank you. Hector, can we come to you? Off the back of John's response to the earlier question, what, if any, does anything come to mind when we talk about government support in relation to and its players, such as perhaps MCS?
I guess for government, like long-term stability for the policies are key, because as mentioned, all the mining, like average mining project takes around 15 to 20 years. It's a very long lead time, and I think that time will not get any better, because reason why there's even scarcity on commodities, because easy mines are mined. Like industrial revolution started from Europe, and it moved on, and I think like the easier mines to mine in the regions where the industries are developed or depleted. So that's why more difficult mines need to be explored, mined itself. So like the miners need to go deeper and into more frontier markets. So that means like it's going to take longer time to bring new mine. So that's why to attract capital in mine, the most important thing is stability. In whatever policy the government wants to do, that policy needs to stay for a very long time. So I'm not going to say like a certain XX like tax incentive or whatever, like giving back the development, because like those all can be agreed by the government. But whatever government needs to do is they need to keep that policy for long periods, and that's the only way how like country can attract capital. Whether it's like a public company, whether it's a private company, because the game rule needs to stay for long, because it's a long-term thing. Mining is a long-term thing. It's like Mongolian oil mine is 100-year project, so like the game rule needs to be long. And secondly, like I was just thinking on governmental support is the best thing. Perhaps like it's not even governmental, it's the whole entire country. The best thing country can do to attract capital is to have a success story. So what attracts more money than any other case? It's like seeing someone else making more money than you. So if there is like investor that sees some other investor is getting a good deal here, then it will attract more money, because that's the case, because that has been the talk in like, if you think about it, any like trendy topic, like cryptocurrency, for example. I'm sure like some of you maybe bought some Bitcoin or crypto. Why did you guys buy it? Because the price increased, and probably people, some of you know, bought Bitcoin or whatever crypto coin, and maybe they made some profit, and maybe that caused you to buy it because you see someone else making money. So that's the biggest attraction in making money. So that's even similar in a macro level. So in a macro level, I think, in my opinion, of course we can have like, I don't think that there will be like a perfect investment law or perfect any law, because there's always be like pros and cons in any area. But we can, of course, have like a generally good law for attracting thing and generally good policy. But best thing is, in my view, is to have stability and then to have a track records. So in my opinion, Oiltlo is a big track record. Orana project in Mongolia is a good track record. And I also mentioned the Mongolian Mining Corporation, which has over 1,000 shareholders, and the company I work for is one of the big shareholders. It was the first company that raised money from Hong Kong Stock Exchange and listed. So that is also, in my opinion, is a good case study in Mongolia. So we need more good case studies, and policy needs to be stable. That's my view.
Message loud and clear, I think, and believe it or not, I believe I'm in agreement with you 200% on stability. And we're running short on time, so before I finish, close up the panel, I'd like to go to Ainur with just a quick question. What's, from the perspective of the AIFC perhaps, what could financial hubs like AIFC could be doing to facilitate the CAMCA advantage going?
Yes, so I think in order to develop the sector in the region, what is very important is protection of investor interests and a stable regulatory framework that applies to all the CAMCA countries. AIFC specifically, for those of you who are not familiar, that's modeled after the Dubai International Financial Center. It's jurisdiction that operates on British common law, which is distinct from the legal framework of Kazakhstan. So all contractual obligations as well can be done according to familiar international standards to investors. So such things, as I see from my experience, they are greatly valued by foreign investors because it just makes them feel more secure. I know that such a center is also planned to be launched in Tashkent in the next several years, which is great. I think that the more such centers we have, the better. There's, for example, a separate court that consists of 9 judges who are based in the UK. This court has seen legal and arbitration cases from Kazakhstan and the entire Central Asian region. I believe there's more than 3,500 cases that have been seen by the AIFC court so far, and 3 of them have been against the government of Kazakhstan, and the government of Kazakhstan has lost. So we are proud to say that this court is very impartial. And that again is greatly valued by the international investor community because still our region is considered a high-risk region. Especially for those companies who are coming here for the first time, it's scary. So such enablers that make investors feel more at ease, it's good to have them, and the more, the better.
Thank you. We talk about the AIFC at every CAMCA forum, and I'm still very much in awe of this creature, and perhaps one day I might come across it during my work, perhaps not through the dispute resolution, but in some other form. So we have finished, we will close up the panel. If we have any questions from the audience, I see one. Okay.
Hello. I don't know how microphones work. Hi, everyone. My name is Saina Saintulga, 2014 fellow, as well as decarbonization strategy manager at Oyu Tolgoi. But I've had many roles in various different positions over the last few years. One of them was looking for rare earth elements in Mongolia and developing it and doing studies. Now, I want to remind, so I'll get to the question in a little bit. So back in 2009-10 period, I think the world discovered that 90% of rare earth element production was coming from China because China started restricting its exports of rare earth elements, which obviously shot up the prices through the roof. Now, all of a sudden, I think everywhere, especially in the US, started talking about critical minerals and the need to secure these supplies. And these conversations and these discussions and policy papers were popping out. Based on that interest, I was working for a company that invested in looking for rare earth elements in the South Gobi, and I did that job. However, when it came to the point of investing further in developing these deposits into a proper mines and operations, obviously it's going to take close to $1 billion to be able to produce maybe 12,000 tons of this material a year. And the investor interest in Mongolia waned, the investor interest in rare earth elements and these critical minerals waned, the prices dropped, and nobody wanted to give me money. So I see this cycle happening as we speak right now. So what is different now? Victor, I think you mentioned, I mean, it's a really good point, that to be able to develop a proper operating mine, it takes about 15, close to 20 years. OT was first discovered in 2003. It's going to take, it took almost 25 years from the point of discovery to be able to reach its full production potential. So the time frames are immense, the investments are immense due to the size of the deposits. But if the investor interest is cyclical, comes in 1 year, leaves the next year, as we say, money is shy, what's different now? I see this cycle happening again. So how do you address that? Now, I'm not sure who's best positioned to answer the question. Sorry, very long context.
Thank you. Look, I mean, the candid answer is, as of today, I can't tell you with certainty that this situation is different than in the past. What I know is different is that, you mentioned the 2010 moment when China restricted minerals exports to Japan because of a dispute over fishing rights in the East China Sea. So, I mean, Sea of Japan, depending on where one is viewing from. The awareness of that has grown since that time, and I will say, predatory behavior by Chinese companies and governments has become much more plain. They are exercising market power, and so my perspective on this is that will change if and only if that market power is reduced. I believe that it is the case that this awareness that I've just been speaking about can translate into policy actions. Notice that I did not use the word will or is, because that is still uncertain. So, I mean, this is a critical space, and addressing that vulnerability is absolutely front of mind for many, many governments, certainly across the OECD countries. Your reasonable question, with this I'll end, your reasonable question demands a skeptical observation of what happens in response. Watch and see, because it's not only investors that have shied away from Mongolia. Look at the experience of the Mountain Pass mine in California in the United States, which has also experienced the very same cycles that you're talking about.
If I may add some other points on it, like you were asking, like on a cyclicality, like I think like there's like a longer cycle, but nobody knows the future. But I think there's a longer cycle now because, like historically, like 19th century was built on thermal coal, like everything was coal, steam engine, railway. 20th century was built on oil and gas. And I think like in 21st century, if the current trend continues on, there are going to be more EVs, there's going to be more wind farms, and there's going to be more, things that uses electrical motors. And what electrical motor use is the neon dynamite, that the rare earth that's used to make that thing spin for electrical motors. So if that trend's going to continue, then I think there's going to be a longer term demand for that material. And given if there's like a certain blockage in terms of getting those material from certain region, or for example, if China decides not to export, then for other countries, there will be long-term interest to invest in it. Like, I think last year, I think I saw some chart. The current world oil market was 2.1 trillion USD, while entire metal sector was 900 billion USD. And that includes like 200 billion was a steel and 180 billion was a copper, etc., etc. So in future, if oil cars and oil usage gonna decrease, then like that ratio is gonna change and more metal is gonna be used. So I guess like in that metal includes the rare earth, etc. So I think like if there's long-term trend change like that, that will push investors to invest more in that project, in my view.
Maybe a last comment, if we compare now with 2010, and especially regarding the uranium business, acceptability has dramatically changed. And more and more countries, even the ones who were canceling their nuclear plant and nuclear energy production facility, they are coming back more. Most of them are coming back. And all in all, 20 countries committed to triple their nuclear energy production. So it's just going to be a huge change from 10 years ago, 15 years ago.
Just small last comment. I think that we're in the age of AI, and AI requires power, lots of nuclear power, perhaps renewable power. All of that requires critical minerals, and that's on top of the EV and defense industry demands. So I think that's the driver.
Do we have,
Yeah.
We have one more question. I think that'll be our last question for the day.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Aziz Soltabayev, Kyrgyz Republic. We live in an interesting time when, let's say, critical minerals play so much role that EV, specifically in EV industry, cars actually, Volkswagen Germany is its dealer of Volkswagen from Chinese factory that it supplies its cars to Germany cheaper than it's produced in Germany. So in this regard, that's quite important thing. And from the other side, we see that most of the AI chips are actually manufactured and produced by American company. At the same time, most of the production and processing of critical minerals are controlled by China. So some sort of duopoly that we observe. So my question would relates that certainly there's going to be some diplomacy happening in the countries of CAMCA region, and maybe you have observed, and like there's a demand for uranium happening in these countries. Do you see that, those major powers, let's say countries, use some kind of additional policy levers in order to leverage, to access those critical mineral resources in your countries? Or do you see that some countries, in case of if you represent company, that other countries use some, non-traditional alternative policy levers in order to affect, influence, exercise some power in order to alter decision of governments, in case of in favor of other countries? Let's say in Kazakhstan example, there's much of the discussion happening about uranium, nuclear plant to be built in the southern parts of the country. I heard that in Mongolia there are massive protests about uranium production happening. Your observations.
Like I guess you were asking on a policy level wise. I guess, for Mongolia, the export goes to China, and it's very easy, because China is the buyer and China is the biggest producer. But then, if there's any commodity that can be exported at a good price abroad through China, then also that's a market wise. So in that way, I don't know, I can't explain from a policy level if there is that, but from commercial perspective, it was the go-to market for Mongolia, for example, for exporting the commodity.
In terms of Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan has changed its mining code in 2018 to mimic the mining code of West Australia. And that served as a tremendous boost for investment into Kazakhstan mining industry. Companies were able to apply for auctions, etc. From around the world, I really like the example of Saudi Arabia. They have created a fund that will fund early stage exploration in mining. So it's government money going to find these assets that are underdeveloped. I really hope that such examples can be followed by our countries, by CAMCA countries, and perhaps international countries, international partners who are also looking for these metals, and perhaps they would be open to co-fund such initiatives, because I think that's one of the most important factors that CAMCA countries should focus on. It's exploring these unexplored lands.
All right, so with that, let us conclude this final session of the forum and for the day. I know you all are keen to get to the reception, perhaps. So to quote an earlier panel, the fate of the CAMCA countries is in the hands of the CAMCA countries ourselves. So here's to more CAMCA connectivity, CAMCA forums, friendship, political stability, good industrial practices, and everything else that we talked about today. Thank you all for your patience and your participation.